Welcome back to Making Money Matter, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Kerry Stevenson, and we've got Saturn Metals Managing Director, Ian Bamborough. ASX code is STN. Now, why have I asked them to come on? Because I think they've got a really interesting project over in Western Australia. It's a project which I think the market out there may not fully understand. So we're going to do a bit of a deep dive with Ian, talk to him about where the opportunities are, what the strategy is going forward. It's a development and an exploration story. So Ian, great to see you. Welcome to Making Money Matter. First time on the program.
Yeah, hi Kerry. Thanks for having us on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, given it's your first time on, do us a quick summary of who Saturn Metals are before we do the deep dive.
Saturn Metals, ASX listed gold developer in the first instance and explorer in the second one. By default in Western Australia in the heart of the Eastern Goldfields. We have a big 1.84 million ounce and still growing deposit, which is our mining studies show we'd like to pull it out of the ground with open pit and process it with heap leach, which is a little bit different and quite interesting, particularly for Australia.
I'm going to get into heap leach in a moment. It's over in Western Australia. And from memory, there's a lot of mines around where you are.
Yeah, maybe I can share a picture and show the old location map and stuff. There you go. There's a bit of a...
There we go. All right. So that's showing what I just said, which is this is the Keith Kilkenny shear zone. It's a real gold-rich area. And for you, ladies and gentlemen out there, those little Pac-Man type red areas, those are actual mines. And the yellow outline is the Saturn Metals landholding. I'll let you take it over, Ian, and explain a little bit about the history of it.
Yeah, look, it's still, to this day, I'd argue a greenfields land package. It's probably the last bastion of this particular greenstone belt, which has produced well over 44 million ounces, which just had never really been consolidated before, or had really had the exploration for a various sort of historical tenement reasons, and which aren't there anymore. And I guess we've been giving them a good shape now regionally for a few years, and a nice pattern starting to emerge even outside Apollo Hill itself. But yeah, as you mentioned, that Keith Kilkenny shear zone is that actual structure, that gold feeder structure, is responsible for those deposits on there, which are multi-million ounce producers. Northern Star's Carosue Dam, Genesis's Gwalia, Red 5, and obviously the recent merger with Silver Lake that's been announced, King of the Hills. And if you go further up the belt, Thunderbox, again, another huge Northern Star deposit. So as well as developing Apollo Hill, we're also very actively exploring that ground package.
That ground package looks rather large. How'd you get your hands on? Because, again, I'm not a geologist by background, but looking at what other people are and where they are, it seems to me that you might have a bit of a monster there right in the heart of it. And it's on the shear zone.
Yeah, I think I'd love to take... I think that was my predecessors in the companies and current company directors and shareholders who did a fantastic job of pulling that land package together, and I suppose recognised its potential. So I'm just enjoying exploring it.
And is that what? So Apollo Hill, 1.84 million ounces of gold at the moment. Talk to us about the strategy for putting that into production, because I'm looking at all those. I call them the Pac-Man. It's like Space Invaders. They're all coming at you. Do you think that one of them might come and grab you before you can get much further, or are you comfortable that you're safe?
Given the terrain I'm in and the quality of the people in that region, then I'm always looking over my shoulder slightly. However, we are, the deposit itself, I suppose. What a lot of those deposits are mill, classic sort of milling operations where the rock's crushed and ground up and put through a CIL plant to extract the gold. what we're looking at here to really maximise the number of ounces and push the cost down as far as possible is a method called heap leach. So we don't necessarily fit into some of that mill-based strategy around us. There are elements of this deposit which can, but to maximise it, that's why we've kind of set ourselves apart a little bit with that processing method. But yeah, Apollo Hill can throw out some absolutely belting intersections from surface, and I'm sure there's parts of it that are very attractive to people.
I'm going to have to come back a step if you like. Could we just go into okay, there's lots of people around you, that's fine, we'll leave that alone for the moment.
Yep.
Talk to me, if you like, about the heap leach process, because I don't think heap leach is very well understood, and I'm wondering right now, I think you're a market cap about 35, 36 mil. It's quite a low market cap. The share price has been going along, I think it's about 17, 18 cents at the moment. Do you put that low valuation down to investors not understanding the heap leach process? Because it's not that well understood in Australia, but it's safe, it's effective, explain it to us.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I think where Apollo Hill probably battles is the grade that we present at, which for the PEA study was about 0.56 grams per ton. So that you generally, rule of thumb, people are sort of thinking at the moment, well, any big mills that are in production are kind of 0.8, 0.9, 1, 1.1. If you look from Capricorn to Canadas to Red 5, probably 1.2. So when we're made in comparison, those simple comparisons are made next to that, it's probably the grade we're battling. But the grade at Apollo Hill is very much a choice. There is an element of this deposit that we could take higher cut-off grades and look at those more traditional sort of processing methods in Australia. But if I talk about traditional processing methods, it's worth noting that 46% of the world's gold production globally is done by heap leach. And in fact, it's arguably probably the dominant form of gold production across the globe. And in some countries, you're probably looking at 90% of it's done like that. So it isn't a new technology. There's nothing unconventional about it. In this country itself, I think Telfer, Newcrest Telfer operation, which you know, a Newmont Telfer operation, they have a heap leach as a big part of their thing. St Ives Goldfields ran one very successfully. There was one in White Dam in the eastern states, which really, to this day, is probably still sort of producing trailing gold. So really the difference is we, I suppose, what we do is we are able to process lower grade ores because our cost of processing is much lower. So the main reason is all we do is crush the ore and put it on a big pile, and then just like your garden retic system, you sprinkle cyanide on top of it and collect it into ponds and liners beneath it. And then you go through the standard sort of gold extraction process that everyone else does. What that really means is we don't have to build a mill.
Oh.
It's quite an expensive part. And to run a mill, it also uses a lot of electricity and bigger generators. So arguably your capital intensity is also a lot lower. And instead of grinding the rock to 90 microns, we only have to crush it to 8 mil. So your energy use is lower as well. Uses less water. And it's really about pushing the operating cost down, which allows you to treat those lower grade ores, which means your stripping ratio comes down, which means you're not paying to move all that waste. You don't have to build big waste dumps. You don't have to build tailings dams. And the cost equation, any difference in grade that we may represent, on that kind of traditional peer analysis, you've got to look behind that, and it's about margin. And for us, the decision has been, how do we maximize the number of ounces coming out of this deposit in the simplest possible way, And simplicity at the moment is critical, I think, in the goldfields, where everybody's competing for, specialist people and logistics, and so it really becomes quite an elegant solution to maximising the ounces you can get out of this deposit, and that's why we've kind of this bit and leaves us, to some respect, a little bit outside that mill-based strategy on that diagram we talked about.
You talked about cyanide, and then you said there's no waste, and we don't need to be build. There's a lot of capital costs that are not involved when you use heap leach. But is there a component of using cyanide and waste? Excuse my ignorance here, but
no, because it's exactly the same process that everyone else uses on the back end of the processing as well. So having it inside a ball mill, which is turning around using a lot of energy up, with using pumps like you might do to pump water around your garden reticulation system and collecting it in a series of liners and ponds, and at very low levels, probably about 250 to 500 parts per million. So again, a proven, tried and tested. I think it's also worth mentioning, most recently in Western Australia, the Chinese-backed mining companies, Zijin Mining and Norton Goldfields, have just permitted, built and started production on a very similar heap leach project to what we're proposing just outside Kalgoorlie. So they're up and running 10 kilometres west of Kalgoorlie city centre. So it isn't rocket science, and it really is a very elegant solution to these bulk deposits where you can really get huge tonnage and push all your mining costs down. We don't, because we're looking at such big mining blocks, we benefit from lower cost of production. The diggers tend to be a lot bigger, the bench heights tend to be a lot bigger, and again, you don't necessarily have geologists running around on the pit floor marking little ore zones out and everything. It's much more of a sort of rock moving, automated exercise. I won't say quarry. Some people will get upset, but it's about pushing everything down to its lowest unit cost and its greatest simplicity. So right down to the manning levels. And I think that's what you've actually got to do, a bit of maths to work that out. And if people take the time to look at our PEA, you'll start to be able to make some interesting comparisons, and have a look at kind of some of these global heap leach operations. We're not outside the norm.
So do some simple maths for us while you're talking to us, because one of the things I'm thinking of is that investors not understanding heap leach, and then you also said we're what is it, 0.05 grams per ton. So I'm wondering whether, because the heap leach, it costs a lot less, etc., would it be an equivalent? This is in simple terms of something like a 1.2, because you're using the heap leach method and it's very much a simplistic.
We could look at that stripping ratio, how much waste to ore we've got to move as an example, and you're gonna get me on my mental arithmetic late on a Friday afternoon now. But I'll try and keep it as simple as possible for my brain's purpose. If we're looking at a strip ratio of 1.5 to 1, so we've got to remove 1.5 blocks of ore to get to 1. Now, let's say our published mining cost in the PEAs, I think we actually put in probably $4.50 a ton, for example. Then it's $4.50 and $2.25, so it's $6.75 of waste we've got to move to get to 1 block of ore. For a typical gold open pit operation, where you're looking at being more selective with what you take, and you're taking higher cutoff grades and leaving more of the gold behind, you might be looking at 4 to 5 to 1. And typically, if you're being more selective, your mining costs could be a bit higher. because you've got to take smaller ore blocks, and your operators are sat in the digger and making sure they don't dilute the ore, and they're getting right to the edge of the ore blocks that the geologists have marked out. You know, you might be looking at a 10, 20 ton shovel, whereas I'm looking at 60 to 70 ton face shovels for my mining costs, so that there is an increase. So let's say the typical mining operation's got to move 4 blocks, and their mining cost is $5, that's $20. My mining cost is $16 to get to a thing. A typical operation might be $20 to get to a block of ore. So straight away, there's a $4 margin that we're picking up. Our published processing cost in our PEA is about $11.93, if I remember rightly. Per ton. Typically in the goldfields at the moment, I think the very best of you know, the big operations with the big mills that are really hitting the straps are probably doing it at $17, $18 a ton. So you can see that margin in the ton of dirt you've got to move. Of course, we've got lower value, but then we've got to look at the recovery as well. So with heap leach, it's costing you less to process it. So again, the margin between the value in the ground and everything changes, and it's that margin that we've got to sort of focus on.
So it goes back to what I said before, that should people, and again, trying to simplify it, should people not it's not worry about it, but it at 0.05 grams per ton, kind of don't worry about it, because you make it up by using heap leach. The costs are lower. You don't need a mill. It's very simplified process, and you can get it into production a lot quicker and less capital costs.
Yeah, and I mean, don't just take my word for it. I mean, we've actually gone to the quite extensive lengths to publish in our studies a lot of detail on how we've come to those conclusions. And say, for example, our capital cost to build this operation, we've had the benefit of Zijin Mining and Northern Goldfields actually building something pretty much, I wouldn't say exactly the same, but remarkably similar in Western Australia, and commissioned it last year. So the company we used to inform our studies had actually worked on building that, not doing a PFS study or a DFS study for them, actually building it. So we've really tried to be, I suppose what I'm saying is, we're slap bang up to date with our cost structure and assumptions, and we're also local, and that's important, because there are graphs in our presentation where we compare ourselves to some of our North American peers that are in production and doing very well in the heap leach space. What we've also done is gone to the lengths to sort of show our local cost structure here, and you know, really try and demonstrate to people how this stacks up. But and I guess it's, at the end of the day, if you're getting the gold out at those similar all-in sustaining, I think our all-in sustaining cost in the study was like around the 1,800 Australian mark. And interestingly, at your conference, Kerry, I remember sitting there last year, and the gentleman from VanEck stood up and he talked about the all-in sustaining cost for VanEck's exchange traded fund portfolio being about 1,800. So that's a good benchmark for us, you know. So if we've done our homework properly, there's a number of mines picked by VanEck operating around the world that they've put into their exchange traded fund, and we were sitting pretty much spot on with what his portfolio was averaging.
I wonder if that's changed now, because I'm talking to you in March 2024, bit of a higher gold price. How does that affect the economics? Does it put a nice margin up there?
That's right. So if I looked at Apollo Hill when we published our study, I think our sort of net present value was 360 million, but we did that at a gold price of 2,665. I think the gold price today is probably 3,300. So despite that change, the developers particularly, I think we're seeing that higher gold price throw through to the producers, but the developers, there's that lag where that value gap hasn't caught up in the market at the moment, and probably because everybody knows developers actually need funding. But it really is starting to make some projects, I think including ours, make tremendous sense and giving us great confidence to push on.
We look before at the map. It's a big area. Apollo Hill's like a small section of that area. And you said Xinjiang, they've gone ahead, got it all under. They're producing now. Talk to us about the strategy for you in 24 to get Apollo Hill, because I said right at the start, developer and explorer. So I'll get into the exploration, but I just want to finish Apollo Hill. What are you going to do to give investor value?
So with Apollo Hill, we've been running a number of sort of contiguous strategies. We did our PEA and gave everyone a picture of the PEA being a preliminary economic assessment, which is more of a North American term, but we have a lot of North American institutional shareholders on our register. Okay. So that's why we use that term. And that gave a picture of what Apollo Hill, the big project, was going to be. At the same time, we've been running studies on what we call a bulk sample and pilot plant project, where we're really looking very hard now at the feasibility and economics, and I suppose particularly from a technical and market demonstration perspective, a pilot plant option, where we're looking at an operation which is a total of about 1 million tonnes, and basically a mini heap leach pad. And to put it in perspective, it's 1/100th of the main resource, but it's about 1/10 of an annual production. So we're not mucking around either. So if you a heap leach pad is probably 1 million tonnes is about the size of a block here in West Perth, not a building, a whole block. So it's a substantial test. Okay. And we're doing that at scale, so we can really demonstrate that this thing stacks up at scale. So we've been full bottle on studies, permitting and approvals, environmental work, to give ourselves the option to do that. And we're not at kind of any financial investment decision or anything, but we are in those final stages now to be able to submit the permitting, which will probably be done in June. And then we have the option for various reasons, I suppose, mainly technical reasons, demonstration proof of concept reasons. It's almost like a pre-commissioning phase. If you want to look at it, you turn a mill on and kind of instantly or within a week whether you've got it right. You turn a heap leach pad on, there is a bit of a lag.
Of course, yeah.
And also from an environmental perspective, it's a demonstration of our social license, to be able to stand investors on it and show them that we're progressing and we're taking steps towards that big project. So that's been an important part of our strategy this last year, and will continue to be this year. PFS studies, so gone beyond that PEA and really putting some detail now into engineering, water extraction, further work on the metallurgy. We're really, the step changes for Apollo Hill have been in our metallurgical work, and some real breakthroughs we've had. And we're still working on them, and in terms of improving recovery and lowering the cost of doing things. And I suppose we take a very sort of technical, step-by-step, methodical approach to what we do. And so that PFS study, particularly towards the second half of this year, continues. And then the third prong is our exploration, and which we kind of briefly touched on at the start, in that we have that beautiful ground package, and we're out there. 50% of it is arguably just not even touched yet. And to my mind is probably the most exciting part, or the bit that keeps me up at night. I think Apollo Hill is on its own journey now, and I think is almost, my confidence with it is it's self-fulfilling, and I'm convinced it's coming out of the ground one way or the other. And I'd encourage people to get on and be part of that journey. The optionality around us huge. And you know, I am an explorer. I'm always driven by what's happened at Hemi or De Grey and you know, Tropicana and those big discoveries. Never stop thinking about that. And there's always an air core rig turning somewhere in the belt, building that big picture.
So what are you doing with, have you got rigs out there drilling? Just quickly, because we're running out of time, just quickly tell us what you've got out there. And because quite frankly, you make a discovery, a lot of excitement around that. So
that's it. And as well as constantly working on making Apollo Hill bigger and better with drill rigs as well, you know, so there's a phase of that coming up later this year. But yeah, the air core rig has been going since January, and it's kind of in for a month, and we'll wait for assays to catch up, publish some assays and put the picture together, and keep reporting them results. And yeah, like I say, we've had a few wins, and there's been a fair bit of smoke, there's a few matchstick flames, there's a couple of things which I dare to say with a bit of work might turn into a bit of fire. So and then obviously
sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to say, what do you reckon is your biggest challenge right now?
Technically, nothing. It's all going beautifully. So I wouldn't say anything. I mean, we're well funded, we're well supported. We've got a really nice register. I've got a very good team, and thoroughly enjoying it. So yeah,
just want to find that discovery like tomorrow.
Yeah. That's the thing that keeps me up awake, but fills my dreams. But that's enjoyable as well. All
right, let's wrap it up, tie it up in a nice, neat little bow. To me, and by the way, Tony Locantro, who I interview on this channel every now and again, he bloody loves you. Loves Saturn Metals, always talking about, which is one of the reasons I decided I needed to get you on the channel, because every time I talk to Tony, he gets so overexcited and thumps the table and says, bloody Saturn Metals, people need to understand. I hope that you ladies and gentlemen out there now understand that heap leach, the process, is actually not something to be scared about. It's a really good process. It's a simple process, less water, less energy, costs come down. And as Ian said, it's not going to, he doesn't need to build a mill. It takes a bit of time for the heap leach process to work, but ultimately it's very simple. All right, Ian, over to you. Let's wrap it up. I said right at the start, possibly the low val is investors not understanding heap leach. Give us 3 reasons they should be sitting up and taking notice right now.
Big, undeveloped virgin project, and probably one of the simplest gold propositions you'll ever see. Nice methodical step strategy to get there, technically backed, really good if you want funding partners with the like of on the register of Dundee Corporation, Line Selection, Franklin Templeton from the US, Lowell Resource Fund. Like, I suppose some of those very good technical investors have sat up and taken notice of what we're doing. And then we're also offering some excitement in terms of shorter term development pathways with a pilot plant option, and then never stop exploring. So I think, and I think we do it very efficiently as well. So dollars in the ground to ounces created, I think we've got a really good track record.
Well, I think it's pretty exciting. By the way, he said Lion Selection Group, ladies and gentlemen. Probably Headley Woodham knows what he's talking about. They're an investor. John Forward, Lowell Resources Fund. Another one, kind of knows what he's talking about. So these guys will have done their due diligence. And again, this is not financial advice. Make sure you do your own research. Reach out to Ian. Ask as many questions as you like. Ian will be at the Gold Conference 26th to the 28th of August in Sydney. So you can go meet him in person and ask him all the questions that perhaps I haven't covered today. But if I haven't covered it, ask your question down below, and I promise we will come back to you with an answer as well. But really enjoyed chatting to you today. Keep it simple, stupid. Getting underway. Development is underway, but it's also the potential for that discovery upside. Ian Bamborough, great to chat to you today. We'll see you again very soon.
Absolute pleasure, Kerry. Thank you for the opportunity. Bye.